Good afternoon. Nikolai, I didn't know you could sing. I think we might have some use for you. Welcome, and thank you all for joining us for our conversation today about The Little Mermaid and our production, which opens tomorrow night. Let's begin by asking our panel to introduce themselves and let you know how they're connected to this production. We'll start on the end with Adam.
Hi, how are you? I'm Adam Cates. I'm here from New York, and I'm the choreographer.
Hi, I'm Katie Emerson, and I'm playing Ariel. And I'm from Jonesboro, Arkansas.
My name is Ben Franklin. Yes, that is my real name. Benjamin Franklin IV, to be complete. I'm from New York City, and I'm part of Two Ring Circus, and we're part of the ensemble of the show and creating the circus elements in the show.
I'm Melissa Rain Anderson, and I'm in from New York as well, and I'm the director.
It seems like our table got smaller. Is that right? It's a very small table today. This is our holiday production. Our holiday production is usually our biggest show of the season. Disney's The Little Mermaid ran in New York on Broadway in 2007 for about 685 performances, which by Disney standards is not what they want to see. That's, that they want years and years of running. But like a lot of plays, and you've heard me talk before, this play had its life originally in regional theater. It opened in Denver at the Denver Center, ran for a summer, and in Denver it sold like hotcakes. They sold 95,000 tickets to it in Denver. And then it ran on Broadway, and then it got tweaked. It got rewritten a little bit. Songs were changed around, songs were dropped, and before it started having its regional life, which is where it is today, with a number of regional theaters around the country. Since it closed in 2008, a lot of regional theaters around the country have been producing The Little Mermaid to great success. Now, when you get when you include a Disney production in your season, it's a little different than normal getting the rights to shows like Bridges of Madison County or other productions, or Elf like we did last year, because Disney obviously is a big corporation and they control much more of the process than a normal rights company would do. First of all, the name of the play is Disney's The Little Mermaid. Actually, that's not correct. The name of the play is Disney, The Little Mermaid, which is a bizarre thing because when we got the rights, the Disney Corporation approves your marketing. They don't approve your creative. They don't approve your casting. They don't approve your creative team. But they approve the visual images. They approve what your poster looks like. They have to sign off on that. And they also have to sign off on how you market the show. And that's what gets to this idea. When you talk about Disney's The Little Mermaid, and that's traditionally how it's been marketed, but in the last year, Disney decided that they didn't want an apostrophe or possessive S on the word Disney because that's confusing in foreign markets. The possessive S is confusing in foreign markets. So Disney instructed all of the rights holders in the United States to drop the Disneys and just say Disney. So it becomes, we're presenting Disney, The Little Mermaid, which sounds weird, right? You want to do the show, you march to the tune of the drummer who's playing the tune. So we're presenting, it says, in official wording, it says, Arkansas Repertory Theatre's production of Disney, The Little Mermaid. And so we've kind of cheated a little bit, well, because it looks stupid. And so we had to, we've fudged it a little bit just because it looks like we made a mistake. But if you look at our season brochure, it says Disney, The Little Mermaid. Now, Disney, The Little Mermaid, has done exceptionally well for us. Have you got your tickets yet? Because right now, the availability is Christmas and after. There are some single tickets available here and there. There are patches of tickets available. There are always cancellations. We'll probably start a standing room policy before too long. But this is great news for the rep. This is being able, the holiday show, this is what it's supposed to do. It's supposed to bring about 16,000 Arkansans down to the rep over the holiday season. And of course, the success of The Little Mermaid, of course, will mean that from now on in the future, all of my programming choices will revolve around the buying habits of 8-year-old girls. because that seems to be the real market for us, is selling tickets to 8-year-old girls and their parents who are buying them at their demand. But let's turn our attention to the specific production you're going to see when you come down to the Rep between now and the 4th of January. And let me begin with our director, Melissa. Melissa, tell us a little bit about the creation of this project, how it came to be, and how do you take something, we know, a lot of us, of course, we know the story. Many of us, as I'm looking in this room, we know the Hans Christian Andersen story, which is very different than the film that was created by Disney in their run of very successful animation stories. But, and this is, of course, we're telling the Disney story, not the Hans Christian Andersen story. But where do you start there? We have such an iconic film. And where do you start bringing that story to life on stage?
Well, the thing that drew me in is Ariel, the character of Ariel. She is a true hero. She gives up everything, her home, her family, everything that she's ever known, to go after what she believes is her true home. Yes, she falls in love with the prince, and it's a lot about the prince, but it's also because she never really felt at home in her own skin, or with her family, or even in her own environment. And she gives all of that away to go after what she believes in her heart is where she's supposed to be. And so it's truly heroic. She signs a contract, with an evil aunt, Ursula. She gives away her voice. And in the end, she gives away even her body. She gives away her tail, and she becomes human. She completely transforms. She has a few friends along the way that help her, as any hero needs. But eventually, it's herself. Ariel makes the choice for herself. And at the end of the play, her father even says the words, "Ariel can speak for herself." And so the overarching story is about this really brave young woman. And so I thought, well, this is a great story to be told, and I'd love to enter in and tell her story. So that's kind of what attached me to it. Then the next sort of project is figuring out how to tell the story that takes place deep under the ocean. It also takes place on the ocean's surface. It takes place on the ocean's surface with a boat. It takes place on the beach with water behind you, and in a palace, 5 different locations in a palace. So the language of water, the language of the ocean, of the sea, being underneath, being on top of, being in a boat, and theatrically figuring out how to tell that the best way we know how. And so Adam Cates came on board as a choreographer, and he had the idea to hire Two Ring Circus. They do aerial acts, so they can be in the air, so it turns sort of the air into the water, if that makes sense. So it becomes more of a vertical experience rather than just on the ground. So that started our quest with Shoko, our scenic design, to figure out the rules of the water. And that was really cool, because once we started making decisions that way, it opened up an entire way of storytelling. So we use blue silks for the surface of the water. When we're down deep, our designer came up with a fish header. So there's a bunch of fish that are on top of us to give the sense that we're underneath, and it gets a little dimmer down there. If you're in Ursula's lair, it's very dark. And she has menacing anglerfish and very little light. So the design process was completely intertwined with the directorial choreography, the way we told the story. So those were the kind of the beginning stepstones of conquering a tale that takes place in the ocean.
And and we're so glad to have Melissa here, and most of the creative team for Little Mermaid is having their first experience at Arkansas Rep. Our director, our choreographer, our lighting designer, our set designer, and our stage manager, and our circus creative team are all here for the first time. The only Rep veteran in the creative team is Rafael Castanera, who designed the costumes. And you know Rafael's work from Les Mis and The Wiz and Beauty and the Beast, and so many shows that you've come to see at the Rep. And so we're very glad to have so many new ideas, new energy coming to us here and sharing their work and their talent with all of you when you come down and see the production. And let me jump over to Adam, our choreographer. And you guys had worked together prior. Is that right? Or am I making that up?
We had not. Our mutual friends set us up on this blind date. But Ben and I go, and Josh from Touring Circus go back like 10 years. And Ben and Melissa had done a show together, which I was originally going to be involved in. We just we run in the same circles, but Melissa and I just hadn't connected yet until now. So, and hopefully it went well and we'll be together a lot.
I think it hasn't opened yet.
But yeah, there's a lot of history between all of us.
So talk about the creation of the choreography, because we've talked about the origins of the film and it being underwater. So you have those same challenges, and at the same time, unlike the film, the choreography and a lot of the music that's associated with the choreography is created for the production specifically, rather than just, oh, that was in the film and we're worried about that.
Right.
Talk about the creation of the choreography and what kinds of different choreography are woven into this story.
Of course, yeah. So, this movie, it came out in 1989, and we were like 11. 7th, 8th grade. Yeah. So,
I was not 11 at that.
but it was
my
like
kids were 11.
A very influential time, and for us, I think, creatively, starting to really hone in on this, and so I've had a connection to this music for decades, and started choreographing to it in my backyard, of course, at age 11, like you do, like everybody does, right? Very drawn to this iconic music, which in the film, you remember like the Under the Sea, right? That won the Oscar, and Kiss the Girl. Though they were animated, the animation was choreographed in a way. But when they were developing the production for Broadway, of course, they took these numbers and we call it like opening it up. So putting in a dance break, adding more music and arrangements and things like that. And so Under the Sea, you'll recognize everything like that you love from the movie, but in the middle, all of a sudden, it explodes open into this much bigger party. But they kind of took those same Afro-Caribbean rhythms, the marimba, the samba, and things like that. So because the music in that number is so specific to a cultural kind of dance, that's where I started, like looking at samba and carnival in Rio and kind of pulling from that vocabulary, Alvin Ailey, and researching that way. And then also, like Melissa said, trying to figure out how can we do something, because on the water, you're floating, right? So how can we get different levels going? And we had this idea that we would do aerial silks, and there's a lot of other surprises too that sort of happened. So for that number, that's kind of where I started. Also, Raphael, who designed the costumes, was very influential in the direction I wanted to go movement-wise, because he kind of took the idea of taking these sea creatures, and instead of being literal, like literally walking out as a fish with, gills on the side of your face, taking the idea of that and then transforming it in kind of a Vegas sort of way. So the women are showgirls for all intent and purposes. A very Vegas kind of version of this idea, and so that was also very influential to me in terms of how people would move and how things would move around the stage, influenced by like Ziegfeld Follies and Folies Bergère and like all those iconic sort of shows. So that was that number. But the other, as they were creating more music for this production, they really gave you a lot of versatility. So Chef Louis' number, Le Poisson, in the kitchen, has an extension where we take it into the dining room, and because he's French, they wrote a big can-can number. So you get some of that. Scuttle, the seagull, who's very quirky and funny, and Buddy Hackett, right, was the voice of the film, like a vaudevillian. They created a number for him that becomes a big tap number with all these tap dancing seagulls. So, you know, a lot of the ideas behind numbers conceptually, like Disney kind of hands to you. They're like, this is a tap number, obviously. You know, this is a samba number, obviously. So a lot of those answers kind of came easily. But I think for me, the more creative way in was how can we like work with Touring Circus to integrate circus elements in a different kind of way, and open up this world so that, you know, people that come see this show who know The Little Mermaid and know the movie and love Disney and love all of that can be surprised just as much as anybody who's experiencing Little Mermaid for the first time. So I think we did. I think we like you've never really seen anything like this. It's going to be pretty different. I hope you like it.
One thing to piggyback on that is I'm really actually surprised, and maybe we need to do our research on this, but I'm surprised that this production, that Little Mermaid has never used circus elements before, because it suits it's amazing how well it suits it. I mean, even because we have it starting right away on the ship, because human beings on ships climb ropes. And so right away, people are in the air. It's not only the fish that we're trying to create as a vertical situation, there's also birds in Kiss the Girl. So it made all the sense in the world that birds would be in the air. So it kind of all the way through, it weaves beautifully. So it never feels like it's its own part of the play. It feels like it's completely immersive inside of it. And I think it was like a week and a half in, and I went to go over. They're rehearsing in the annex. They're set up with their rig, and I just turned to Adam and I said, "We need more of this. more."
We kept finding more places for it that we hadn't even thought about months before. Just it became very obvious how well it was going to work.
It suits. It tells the story. It doesn't take away.
I mean, most regional productions, they do incorporate flying elements. They use the system that was developed for Peter Pan, like you know,
with
that's
a
been
harness.
developed over time. Yeah, with harness and wire, and it's very beautiful. And we were thinking about maybe doing that at first, but and on Broadway they did kind of big parade floats, like kind of what you would see at Disney World, and then people would be suspended from those. But you know, we just wanted to do our own thing, I guess. Yeah, just our own take.
You know, when you saw Mary Poppins last year, you know that we flew Mary back and forth on several occasions, and that worked very well in that production because it's very iconic that Mary's going to fly. But you know, when you're on stage at the Rep, from the proscenium line, that is to say the frame of the stage, to the back wall is 26 feet, and with another roughly 10 to 12 feet from that proscenium frame to the what we call the apron of the stage, the edge that's closest to the audience. That's a very narrow theater, and our ceiling height is only 30 feet, which is very low. So the idea of flying is a real challenge in our space, particularly when you have set elements that have to come and go. So the design is challenged. Our space is challenged by the needs of when you have to fly and when you have to have a lot of scenery come and go. And so I think, you know, when you have lemons, you make lemonade. And so I think that it was very ingenious to come up with the idea of the circus skill, the visual of circus work in the space, because as Melissa said, you do get that sense of vertical without using up all the lines we need to fly things in and out in the ceiling. You can only, you know, you just can't stick somebody up in the air anywhere. You've got to stick them up in the air on the tracks. The tracks that run from stage left to stage right are already in the ceiling. It's like a train. You know, you can't run a train through a field. Well, you can't fly people if they're not on tracks. And the tracks are set and locked, and that you can't have more of them, and you can't change them. So integrating the circus work, I think, has worked very well and solved a big challenge of the magical quality of this play. So Ben, tell us about, I mean, we've talked about the why, But talk to us about the how, and talk about your own background. Did you start out as an actor or a circus performer? Did you run away and join the circus?
Quite literally.
Tell us about your background, how you came to that.
So I'm from the second smallest county in Virginia, very small town country boy, and I decided I was going to be an actor in the 7th grade, right when The Little Mermaid came out. I wore the soundtrack out, and when Adam says it helped shape our lives, definitely. I went to school for musical theater. I have a BFA in musical theater. I worked as an actor all over the country, toured the world, had a great career. And then I ran away and joined the circus, which is nothing I ever imagined. I'm terrified of heights, always have been. My father's a contractor, and I used to work with him putting roofs on in the summertime, and I would white-knuckle the ladder. He looks at me and goes, "I can't believe you're doing what you're doing." But it's actually helped break my fear down by learning these skills. So we started a company in New York, and all of us in our company come from the theater and dance worlds. So we all sing, we all dance, a couple of us play instruments, and we wanted to create a company where we could utilize the skills that we've trained for our entire lives while integrating it into the circus. So we created a bunch of shows, and we've had some good success. Got to travel to China last year doing our original production, which was the most surreal experience I've ever had. And now all of a sudden, this door is kind of opened up where theaters are, well, friends are calling and saying, "Hey, I'm doing a show. I think what you guys do is exactly right for it." So in this past year, we've done 3 productions where we've gone in to be a theatrical consultant to execute the necessary movement and choreography and be a part of the show as well as design it, which almost feels like, I don't know, like it was supposed to happen. Like we've been building up to this moment because we're right in our element where we love to be. Like we get to sing and dance and do our circus. It's great. So we were closing a production of The Wizard of Oz that the director had wanted to do. There's a line in the show where he says, if you, Annam says, "You want to join the circus, why don't you just run away with it?" So he turned Oz into the circus. Well, we're closing that show, and I'm walking to like my final performance, and Adam calls and goes, "I'm doing The Little Mermaid. Any chance you might want to?" And Melissa Anderson is directing. I was like, "Oh my gosh, all the worlds are colliding." And I went and talked to everyone, and everyone's like, "Yeah, that would be perfect. That sounds great." So in a matter of 3 days, we were doing this show, and it moved so swiftly, and it was really, really exciting because it was just happening so quickly. So the next thing, we immediately start talking about, okay, how are we going to do this? And you have to find out what the theater space is. And they're like, "Well, we don't have fly space." And I was like, "Okay, great." We start doing our research and met with a friend who is a professional rigger who was like, "I think you guys could do this." So we are using pulley points with a counterweight system, sort of like they would use for their fly system, except it's hauling people rather than set. And so we have 2 pulley points located on the stage in various areas, and one that is a dead hung point that we swag the apparatus out, and at intermission, we climb up, we switch out to the next apparatus, and we climb back down. It's very, very simple. Everything about it is very, very simple, but the thing that I like about how it works in this show is everything about this show from the second it begins tells you this is how we're going to tell the story. It's not going to be fire and smoke and trapdoors that are sliding out and things flipping around all by automation. It's very actor-driven, and I think it adds a lot of the heart to it, that you see people do these things. And where they mentioned that a lot of the productions have people flying on lines, well, we're not. We don't use lines. We don't have any safety harnesses. What you see is us using our own strength and skill to climb, to contort around, to flip, to drop. And it definitely gives an excitement that like, you hear people in the audience go, and that's what you want at the circus. That's the whole point. That's why people have been going for generations, is that fear and excitement. So we're just loving being a part of this show. We're wearing incredible clothes, we're working with wonderful people, and we're getting to do what we love to do in an environment that suits us. So, is that?
No, that's perfect. You know, and Ben is right on the factor. We have that. Mike McCurdy and I have that same experience. We look at our liability policy, but
We carry our own insurance.
but it is. I think the word that comes to mind is thrilling. It's thrilling to see that, and it's something we've never seen on our stage. So here it is. This is our 40th anniversary, and here we are 40 years before we've actually incorporated something that I think helps the storytelling so much. And that's, I think, you know, that to see your all's work is really exciting, and I enjoy watching it every day. I mean, there's always pieces of it. I've seen it now as we've worked through rehearsals and this. I've seen the incorporation of it, but I'm still seeing new things, and so that's very exciting. You know, I'm going to talk to Katie a little bit here now because, you know, Katie, you're playing the role that is the every little girl's dream, and I don't imagine you were. I don't even know if you were alive when the film came out.
Oh, I was. I remember it well.
No, you weren't. You had to be like 2.
I was 3.
See.
I was 3.
So now you've been. Let's first begin by just setting the context. You've been on our stage before. Tell us about some of the other productions they might have seen you in at the Rep.
Oh, sure. I started my professional career right out of college at Elon University in The Who's Tommy in 2009. Then I was in Evita, where I got my equity card. Thanks. As
You were the mistress in Evita,
I was
right?
the mistress.
There's a beautiful song in that show.
Oh, love that suitcase in that hall. And then I was in Hairspray. I played Penny in Hairspray, which was a joy. Then I was in A Christmas Carol. And then last fall, I was Teen Girl #1 in Memphis, which was wonderful and a surprise to me that I was going to be in that. It was wonderful. And now here I am playing Ariel. And the Little Mermaid has, like these two have said, has been quite a huge deal in my life. It came out when I was 3 years old, and I was. It was the first thing that really got me singing all the time. My mom tells this story about how she would set me up on top of the bank counter that my dad worked in this building. There was a bank at the bottom when we'd go visit, and she would sit me up on top of the counter, and I would sing the entire score of The Little Mermaid for suckers.
Do you mean lollipops or losers?
You know, a healthy combination, I think.
Okay.
Yes. The suckers who stuck around for the entire, for all of it. Definitely. They also gave me lollipops. Right. I always, like my entire life, have been singing this music, been singing a part of your world, and I certainly feel like incredibly lucky to do what I do in my shower every day anyway, and in any body of water wherever I am. So, yeah, I'm living my dream, and it's wonderful. My whole family lives around the Little Rock area, and my dad is still in Jonesboro, so everybody is close by and gets to see me live my dream. And the first time I put on my wig, I just started sobbing. It was unbelievable that it was real. I'm so excited and feel so incredibly lucky.
And what's it like, you know, okay, so how hard is it to actually bring to life a character you've lived with your whole life? Is it different than you thought it would be? Is it harder? Do you have to make adjustments or is it just like singing for lollipops?
Well, I was nervous. I was very nervous. This is a character I know and love so well. Everyone is so familiar with it, so everyone has an idea of what she's like. But one of the things that I have always prided myself in as an actor is really taking a character that you know and giving it more life. I play a lot of little girls, funny enough, and they tend to be kind of two-dimensional and helpless, and they don't seem necessarily like real people. But Ariel's weird. She's different, and I've done my best to make her unique, because she doesn't feel the same as everybody else, and she's funny, and she sees different things and everything. So I've tried to incorporate pieces of myself, because I felt that way in Arkansas. As much as I love this place, I knew that I was destined to go out and do other things, and to explore the world, and to do things outside of my comfort zone. And I was lucky enough that I had a mom who supported me to follow those dreams, and so I relate to her a lot. So I've done my best to bring myself to her and my quirkiness, while also trying to be the same character that everybody knows and loves.
Well, I want to talk about casting. I'm going to come back to Melissa and talk about the casting, because once again we're faced with iconic images that, as you guys have all talked about, you guys growing up with it. For me, my kids grew up with it, and for some of you, it may be kids or grandkids grew up with this show. Is that a help or a challenge in the casting process? We do auditions in Little Rock and we do auditions in New York. This cast size is 22, and I don't know off the top of my head how many of them are from Arkansas, but probably about 8 or 9 are from Arkansas. The rest are from New York or some other area outside of the city.
Yeah.
But talk about the casting process a little bit and what you were looking for, and were you trying to find people who existed that would be familiar physically or vocally, or breaking molds? What'd you think?
Well, we didn't really go into it saying they need to look like the movie. We really didn't. Everybody won the role because they were the right people for the role. We got really lucky with Katie. I mean, she does look like Ariel from the movie. She was born to play the part, but she won the role because she was beautiful in the audition and took the adjustments gorgeously, and she does bring herself to the character, and she's not a carbon copy of the movie. She's her own heart and soul inside of Ariel. She lives within her. But we got lucky in some other cases too. And then Raphael, of course, helps with the costumes, help with that as well. So no, we weren't really looking for carbon copies, but it does help if there's a little bit of an essence or a soul or a heartbeat that feels like the movie, because it's so ingrained in our bodies. One thing that we played around with that I think that is working really well is that the characters in the play that have more power tend to be taller in our cast. And Ariel and her little band of friends, so Sebastian the crab, and Flounder, her fish friend, and Scuttle, the seabird, are all very short. And Raphael, our costume designer, has enhanced that even more. So Ursula and her father, King Triton, have huge shoes on. So I think Evan turns out to be over 7 feet.
6'5" without his shoes on. So he's close to 7'2" once the crown is on.
He's very large and commanding, and he has a very large and commanding voice as well, as does our Ursula. She herself, I think, is 6 feet tall on her own, and then her platinum heels put her another 6 feet, 7 feet, in the 7 inches, and then the wig. So she's quite an event. Her costume is quite an event. Next to our little Katie here, it's visually really interesting. So that was one of the things that we took into consideration for that. But mostly, when I go in to cast something, people in the room that come in and they breathe with their hearts and their souls, those are the kind of people that I want to work with. And we got really lucky with this one because they all said yes. And we, our Sebastian Cornelius, who is sort of our MC for the evening, and he connects with the audience a lot, and he carries a lot of that heart and soul of the piece for us. And he's amazing. He's amazing. But each and every one, down to all the ensemble members too, they breathe this piece inside of them. So the things that we loved about the movie, although it might not be a carbon copy, it's the true essence and heart of what makes it tick that we were looking for. The joy, the buoyancy, and the community.
And I will say though, talking about that coincidentally, you mentioned that Katie looks a lot like the vision of Ariel, and our Prince Eric looks like he just got pulled out of the film and kind of animated and stuck on stage because he just resembles that character so much. And we mentioned Raphael a lot, the costume design. This design team has, as we've talked throughout the afternoon about the environment, the physical world, this under the sea world. Melissa mentioned how many different locations there are. And these 22 actors are playing many of them are playing multiple characters. And our team, Raphael, has designed over 80 costumes for these actors, and we've been working on the creation of these costumes since the summertime. We began in June, the execution of the costumes, the painting, and then the realization of the costumes. Because when you come and see a show at the Rep, and I mention this frequently when we're here, everything on the stage was created specifically for this production. Everything was made from scratch, and those costumes that you'll see were made, designed, painted, cut by scratch. And the wigs that you'll see, and we mention often our wig designer, a guy named Rob Pickens, who is from North Little Rock and who's 19 years old. And I guarantee you that in 20 years, he's going to be the go-to guy on Broadway for the best wigs you could possibly imagine. His work is astounding, and it's all created from scratch. THV was so kind to do a long extended feature on the creation of the costumes and the creation of the wigs. And that kind of work, which takes thousands of man-hours and is all done on our third floor, is really phenomenal. And when you come and see the work and the characters, the costumes are a character unto themselves, that they take this amazing work that the actors are doing, and seeing the designer run where they're just in their street clothes was great. And then to see them brought to life through the realization of these costumes is really something that I think makes the production special. And the point I want to make again is that it's created right for you. And one of the things, somebody asked us last night in one of our pre-show talks is, what happens when this production closes on January 4? Well, the answer is, these guys, a couple of them will have already left, but they'll go back to their other lives and other productions. We'll salvage from the stage what we can and throw the rest of it in a dumpster. But the costumes for this production will have a life across regional theater for several years. We sometimes select specific shows, and they're always designed by Raphael. The last one was Les Mis, where we have sort of a separate income stream for the Rep, where we create packages of costumes that we rent out to other theaters. And so when they're building this particular production of The Little Mermaid, we're designing it and building it with the idea that these costumes will last a very long time and that they'll be used, we'll market them and rent them to other theaters around the country. And because Little Mermaid is just starting to make its way through regional theater, we think for the next at least 4 or 5 years, there'll be quite a demand for these costumes, and they're really quite stunning, and I think they would be beloved in any theater that you could imagine. So that's sort of a little sidebar about the physical life of the play and the work that these guys are creating and the work our craftsmen are doing even as we speak on the finishing touches for the show. But let's take this opportunity to open up for questions. What do you guys want to talk about? Ruth has an immediate question. They're going to get you a mic.
This is for Ben and for Bob. I want to know what was the third play that you have done this year, and how many of you guys came down, and did this blow our budget because they didn't get hired till 3 days before? Just curious.
So, when we were contacted, evidently there was a contract with ZFX, which is one of the major fly companies who does Peter Pan around. We cost less than them. So we didn't blow your budget. The other show we did, two of us, Joshua, who's in this production with us, who you'll see featured very much in the show. We did The Ghost of Versailles at LA Opera this past year. It was the second production of that show in full scale since the original at the Metropolitan Opera. So there were 85 people on stage and 72 in the orchestra. It was mammoth and mesmerizing.
And Patti LuPone.
And Patti
Because why
LuPone.
not?
I got to carry Patti LuPone around on stage. Yeah, it was kind of a dream come true. And she was lovely.
She didn't scream at anybody.
There were 3 of us. So our company is actually only 4, and one of them, Lanny, our female in the company, her husband Ken is managing all of our things back home in New York while the 3 of us are here.
Also, just they were hired in July, but it was a very quick hire, meaning they were hired within 3 days. But they've been part of the entire production planning for months. So yeah, we didn't just scoop them up a week ago. Although they probably could have done that.
Yeah, no, to answer the second part of your question, it's worked very well. You know, when we initially thought we would be bringing in the same people we worked with for Mary Poppins to do the flying, because that's kind of your traditional default, and when you're going to work with them, you've got to book them like a year out, particularly in December when everybody's hiring them to do Peter Pan. So we had done the preliminary work to line them up and get all that when the wonderful folks at Touring Circus came into the conversation, and so it worked out well for us. And certainly from an artistic point of view, I think it worked out much better for us. The flying would have been fine, and we would have done it, and it would have been, it would have been wonderful. But this adds a surprise element, and this adds a different level of magic to the production. And there are many aspects of this production that we could talk about in terms of budget, and I'm sure we will at our next board meeting. The Touring Circus is not one of them. Yes, Patrick.
With just 3 weeks of rehearsal, I think it's always, there's a lot of tension on whether it's all going to come together in time for opening night. You've had 1 or 2 public performances with an audience now. How have those gone, and have you learned anything from the audience reaction?
Who wants to take that? I mean, I'll talk about last night, because the first night was like a buyout.
It was a private corporate fundraiser, or nonprofit fundraiser.
Last night, there were little kids all over that audience, and I feel like last night's the first time we really got to see what we'd hoped, which is, through these little kids' eyes. I mean, this show is not going to challenge you intellectually. It's just, you know what I mean? It's just not on that level. But I think that it's going to help people to revisit, their own youthful outlook on life, and to be able to sit in a room full of these kids and to see them experience something like this for the first time. I mean, you were a rock star. It was like she was the Beatles all in one. Like, they didn't know what to do with themselves when she came out on stage, and so that part is like really magical. And then just with all of the circus stuff, I think that the adults in the audience were quite mesmerized as well. They did. Like Under the Sea got applause mid-number, which was awesome. It was fun. Yeah.
I think it might have been the first night. There was a couple of kids sitting in front of us, and the main reason why you have to hire somebody to do magic, either flying or circus or in some way, is there are two moments in the play. There's a when Ariel saves Eric from the shipwreck, right? So that's kind of the huge event. And then at the end of Act 1, when she transforms into a human, is another huge event. And those are the two huge magic points that when I first talked to Ben, and we were under a time pressure, I said, okay, transformation, shipwreck, how do we do it? And then the rest of the show opened up, and it worked so well with what they do. But the I think it was the shipwreck where Ariel saves Eric, and it's a trick. It's a beautiful, 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 magical trick. And then when they landed on the beach, this kid says, "How'd they do that?"
Now, last night, I don't know if you guys could tell, but there was a little girl in the very front row that every time somebody on stage was sang like this, she raised her hands like this. But it was the adults that were thrilled last night. I mean, really, the kids too, but the adults were also thrilled because there's so much to watch and enjoy. But I'll tell you, this business of entertaining is serious business. We're not goofing around here. And I'll tell you, we did a dress rehearsal, a run on Sunday. We had a performance Tuesday night, Wednesday night. So we've had 3 run-throughs, and we've stopped the show twice. We've only done it once without stopping, on Tuesday night. We stopped on Sunday night. We stopped last night. With 375 people in the house, we stopped the show in the middle of Act 1. Because this is what they're doing is not child's play. And if one little thing goes wrong, we're talking about people 30 feet in the air. So we had to stop both times because somebody was about to get hurt. And so that's what we're addressing, so that's what previews are for, to work out those. You can go to Broadway shows that stop 20 times during previews. That's not an unusual thing in previews. It's unusual for us, but we've never had people hanging by one hand, 25 feet in the air. And as Ben said, there's no safety net. They're not attached to anything. So this production, we're talking very lightheartedly about it and about how much fun it is. And it is a lot of fun, and it is amazing. But making amazing is a lot of work. And these guys are going back into rehearsal after we leave here to address the issues of, okay, why did that happen? Why did that curtain do this thing that caused them to get stuck up in the air? What are the things that we need to do to change and evolve? So these guys are thinking, meeting constantly. Just everybody's using their creative skills to create what looks like an effortless, beautiful, fun experience. But to create effortless and beautiful and fun takes a lot of work, and that's the thing that these guys have been focused on as we've moved forward. Other questions? Yes, Jana. She's going to bring you a mic.
This is for Katie. I know you're professionally trained, of course, as a singer, but the demands are so great on all the performances, and as long as the run is. Do you rest your voice? Do the singers rest their voices during the day? And I've always wondered, do you stay quiet and rested and then give it all at night? How do you protect your voice? You have to keep it strong the whole run of the show.
Well, I try to get sleep. Sleep is really like the most important thing. I try not to worry about it too much, because when I overthink things is when I start to really mess up. But yeah, no, you just have to treat yourself. It's in a lot of ways, it's like being like an athlete. Like I'm trying to eat really well. I'm never better to my body than when I'm doing a show. Exercise, do yoga, I'm meditating, just trying to keep myself calm, basically. And and drinking a lot of water. Just anything anyone would do when they're prepping for anything important. But no, unless I'm having an issue, I generally, I talk. I live my life like a regular lady. So.
What else would you like to know? What can we talk about? Yeah, Terry.
Since there's been so much talk about the rigging, I thought I'd give you a little bit of background about that, and that's back in '85 when we were converting that building from a department store to the theater. We did have a consultant out of New York, and I think the company was called Sequoia, if I'm not mistaken, that did the rigging. The rigging is independent of the building. The building would not have held all that structure. Leanne Matson's nodding, her husband was the contractor. I was the architect. But we had to cut out the whole second floor of the building to create the theater space. And there was a decision that had to be made as to whether that stage would have a fly loft and go up into the third floor or not. And a lot of that had to do with finances and the cost of creating that. But there's also a consequence that when you create a true fly loft, then you have what's called in the building trade a working stage, and the working stage requires a fire separation or a fire curtain at the proscenium opening for fire safety. All of that costs a lot of money. Not only does and it affects what you can do and cannot do relative to the curtain being able to close in an emergency. So this stage does not have the fire curtain, and that's because the ceiling of the auditorium is the same height all the way over the stage. So it is not called a quote working stage. It is just part of the auditorium, but it was done that way on purpose. And the actual rigging part is a steel structure that is totally independent of the building. It could sit there and the whole rest of the building would be gone. So it has its own foundations that go all the way down to the earth and were built specifically for the 4 columns that hold up that steel rigging that's just inside the shell of the space. So that's why it works.
And if you want to see what it looked like in construction, if you go up to Foster's, our bar, and look at the photographs on the walls, they are photographs from Terry's archives of the actual construction process that Terry's talking about, where they went down to the bedrock and anchored those columns to build the frame of the theater. So next time you're in Foster's, check out those photographs. They look pretty cool. And Terry, as he mentioned, was the architect that created that process and also led the renovation that we did just a few years ago in 2009, 2010. Talking about, we talked, even in the renovation, we talked about should we add a fly loft? That is to say, take the roof of the stage house up to get it to 75 feet tall. But the cost of that computes roughly to about $500 a square foot of airspace. Cubically, right? It's a pricey endeavor, which is why we have a 30-foot ceiling. What else can we answer for you guys? Thank you, Terry, for that. What else would you like to know about this or anything else? Yes.
So where's the character that plays Eric? Is he single? Where's he at? I'm just kidding. No, I think, Adam, you're the one that does the costumes. So should we expect, like, the main characters, will they all be in, like, their traditional costumes that we saw in the movie?
Oh, I didn't do the costumes. That Raphael, yeah, he's not here today. But yes, you will get a sense of what you remember from the movie, but not a carbon copy. And I think in Act 2, Katie changes clothes like 10 times constantly. So you'll get the essence of it, but not a carbon copy. Yeah.
Like, for instance, in the Broadway show, they had, a lot of the characters that under the water had tails that were, motorized and such. And we're taking a different approach. But there are the iconic references to the costumes with still creating our own special production. Well, we need to wrap it up now. I'm sorry, we got to wrap it up. I want to thank you all for being here today, and we look forward to seeing you at the Little Mermaid, which runs through January 4. Thank you very much.